All right, welcome back to Intro to Web. We're going to be going over Flexbox and CSS Grid today. So both of these are layout paradigms. One is significantly older than the other by about 8 years-ish. And this became a solution when we had to deal with smartphones. So both of these are ways of handling the mobile responsive problem. And we'll be going over exactly what those are and how they handle them in a couple of seconds here. So let's start with Flexbox. Flexbox was the original layout paradigm where when a device renders the content of your DOM, how does it actually render that? Well, being that we have so many devices now, and back when this was made, it was less true, but there are still a lot of devices, way too many to make custom layouts for each device. So, okay, well, how do we solve that problem? Well, we solve that problem by having dynamic layouts. And this is how that is handled. It is handled by a series of containers and then flex items. So as I was talking here, this little video was playing. So I'm going to play this video again. And the purple is the container, and then the blue is the actual flex items itself. And as the screen gets smaller in terms of width, as you run out of space, that will go down, the content will go down to the next row. And then as you get back bigger and you have enough space again, then that content will come back up into that row, and we'll get back to one row here in just a second. And there it is. Okay, so that is how Flexbox handles this dynamic layout problem. All right, and this is what we had for a long time. So Flexbox containers. Okay, so for using this Aprilia site again, we have this orange box here. So we have our image and then we have some text. Okay, so that's going to be this thing right here. And then we have what they call editorial content. And then that is inside there. And then the figure right there. Okay, so that's both content. And then if I can bring your attention over to the right, display flex. Hey, we're going to make this flex box, and then flex flow, which happens to be row and wrap. And that's what I demonstrated to you in that video just a couple of seconds ago. All right. Flexbox items. Okay, so this is essentially what we made before with our little demonstration last time. We just made a series of Flexbox items. And remember when I was talking about these setting up your structure in your HTML where you can actually identify and manipulate chunks of logical content? Well, it was for this. So this is based on a series of containers and then flex items, and it's up to you what is a container and what is a flex item. And this is part of the reason why this course students struggle with is because there is no procedure. You have to understand the concept, and then it's a lot of trial and error when you're learning. So yeah, it's something that you have to give yourself enough time to work through. So the example that I was showing you in the beginning, this is the code for it, okay? So we have a container class, okay? Right, there's our classic container, and then display flex, row, and then wrap, okay? So those are the three Flexbox properties on the container that this needs to have, okay? And this is going to get applied to these container items that are down here. So if we move on to those container items, notice that we don't have anything in here that you haven't seen already. Width, margin, text align. You might not have seen text align, but that is okay. Padding, border radius, and then border color. None of those are part of the Flexbox CSS family, okay? So you're getting all your properties from this right here in terms of behavior, and then the container items themselves are going to be the same. And also notice that container item is a class over here, and it applies to all the divs. Again, just a little bit more efficient. So if we come back to our original example now, it should make a little bit more sense what this is actually doing. So that purple is again the container, and then each one of these aqua boxes is the flex item. All right. Okay. Okay, so here's a list of Flexbox container properties. All right, I have the link over here for the entire list, but these are the popular ones. All right, again, use your documentation. You're not going to memorize all these. Children properties. All right, you could use these. I rarely use them, but that's me. Other people do. And now we're moving on to CSS Grid. Now, CSS Grid is quite a bit different way of handling that mobile responsive problem. Okay, CSS Grid is essentially, we're going to address the mobile responsive problem, but we're going to do it in a way that closely resembles how we used to lay out things, which was in tables. Okay, so we're going to make a grid, okay, CSS Grid, and then we're going to make that mobilely responsive based on media queries, which we'll get into here in just a second. So I would like to bring your attention to these CSS Grid items, okay, so each one of these orange boxes, and then you can set row and column gaps for your spacing, and then you can control how big each one of these actual content items are. With templates. All right. So here's the example. We have div class of container, then class item, and then item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to point out here is notice how much simpler this layout is. We have a container, and then we have the items that we're trying to control. So if I go back to this, okay, we have a container. We have a container for the flex item, and then we have the actual content inside of that flex item. Okay, so this hyper simplistic example is about the same. But as soon as you start getting into anything that is even reasonably complex, this gets really, really big very, very quickly, especially if you have nested rows. It becomes a problem very quick. So this is much simpler. Okay, got our container, and then we're going to apply everything about the CSS grid in the container again. So we got display of grid, grid template rows, repeat. So we'll go over what that is here in a second. We're going to repeat that twice, and then we want 2 rows of 200 pixels. Okay, so we're setting the row height. And then template columns, repeat. Okay, so we're going to repeat for 3 times, 1 FR. This stands for fractional unit, and we'll get into what this means exactly here in just a second. Grid gap, and then some padding, and then the item is what you would expect. Okay, fractional units. A fractional unit is a dynamic way of giving width or height, but most of the time width, to your CSS grid item. Now, the reason why it's a fractional unit is because it's going to take all available units, right? How many fractional units that you actually have, and then it's going to divide it by whatever you told it. So this 1 here, and then if there was 3 of them, which we have 3 because we're repeating 3, each one of our child elements is going to be 1/3 of the available width. Okay, that's essentially what repeat is doing right here in this orange box. 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. All right, so if we're going to actually calculate these, and you want to be a little bit more precise about it, you're going to have to get the screen width, your total grid gap, so how many gaps that you actually have in your columns. Okay, number of columns, total fractional units. What is the value of 1 FR? And it happens to be about 573 pixels. And if I remember correctly, this is 573 pixels, 0.3 repeating. And it was. Okay. So screen width, 120 or 1920. Grid gap. Okay. So 100 pixels. So number of columns, which we said 3, minus 1 because you don't have a grid or column gap on the right or left of the screen. So minus 1. And then total fractional units, which happens to be 3. So 1FR equals 573.3 repeating. Okay. Hopefully that made sense. You don't actually have to calculate these on your own, but it is helpful to understand what is actually happening here. So a little bit more complex of an example. So we got a repeat of 2, 1FR, so very similar. So we got 2 columns of 1FR. And then we have a third column of 3FR. So take a second to think about what might actually happen here. And if you guess that this over here is going to be a 3/5 and everything else is going to be a 1/5, you are correct. Okay, so that's what we mean by the total fractional units that were given. So we could have said repeat 2 by 10, so it'd be 10FR. And then 3FR, so that would give it a total of 23. So it'd be 10 divided by 23, 10 divided by 23, and then 3 divided by 23, which would be tiny. Okay. So a little bit more reasonable example was the one that was given here. So 1FR, 1FR, 3FR. So 3/5, 1/5, and 1/5 is how big these items are going to be. Okay, and this brings us into media queries quite nicely because our layout might actually need to change depending on, well, what the customer actually wants, and then how the display is actually on the device. So a common example here is the foldable phones now, because it's getting so close to a tablet view. How do you address that? Do you address that as a tablet or do you address that as a phone? Well, the debates are still going, but media queries help you identify how big a device is, and then you can extrapolate that as a proxy to what the device actually is. So just like what this video is showing you, as we make this bigger and smaller, notice that this is every single pixel, but there's breakpoints in here where it actually changes. So the more breakpoints that you have, the more control that you have, but it's also more work and more CPU cycles as well. So here we go. Here's our little example here from before, and we just added a couple media queries, so minimum width of 800 pixels. So as this gets smaller and smaller and smaller, once it gets under 800 pixels, or above 800 pixels, it's going to go to this, because I want phone view first. Okay, so let this get to the point where it's actually on the phone view, and then we'll walk through. Okay. Okay, there's your phone view. Let's pause that. Okay, phone view. Template rows, repeat 2 with 200 pixels. Okay, so all these are a little different. Okay, so template column rows, repeat 200 pixels. All right, so 1, 2, 200 pixels. All right, grid gap. Now this is going to apply to both. So 100 pixels in width and then 100 pixels in height. Makes sense to me. And then we have grid template columns, which was the example that we were just talking about here a couple minutes ago, where we have a repeat of 2, okay, of 1FR. So there's your 1FR, 1FR, and then 3FR, which is right here, which is 3/5. Okay. Now this is going to go down, and then we'll start to increase the size again. So there we go. Let's jump this forward. And as we get bigger, we're going to get down here. Let the break happen, which is right there. Okay, now we're officially inside of this media query, which is tablet view. Okay, so minimum width of 800 pixels. So we're above 800 pixels, but we're less than 1,000 pixels. So we're in this tablet view. We have our template row of 2 by 250 now. So our rows got a little bit taller. And then our template columns are 3 by 1 FR. So we moved away from this 1/5, 1/5, 3/5 scenario to a 1 FR, so equal width for all of them. And if you look over here, that's exactly what's happening. 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. Okay, and then we increased our grid gap to 150. So this is now wider by 50 pixels, and this is taller by 50 pixels. Okay, so the same thing is going to happen down here. Once we get to desktop view, we're going to have our rows of 200 or 300 pixels, and then we're going to keep our 1FRs, and then our grid gap is going to get bigger as well. So let's go ahead and play that. And there we go. All right. So that's going to wrap it up for the lecture portion of this. We're going to go into the demonstration portion here in a couple minutes, and I'll see you there. All right, welcome back, and welcome to the demonstration portion of Flexbox. All right, now what we're going to have to do real quick, like we have up to this point, is we need to show what we're trying to accomplish here. So if you remember correctly, our last little exercise here, we had these same road bikes here, and then they were on their own row. And as we shrink this down, right, they actually shrink with the screen, okay? And then we also have this gravel section down here that does something similar. Now we use the same content, but the concepts are the same. Okay, so that is the version that we are going for, and this is what we left off with last time. So we have these two bikes, these colors. Okay, so we're doing pretty good here. And the first thing that I'm going to do and to match the other one is we naturally need this little gravel section here. So this is part of the reason why we spend so much time on structure and making sure that we have enough going on in terms of classes and making sure things are flexible, because you just don't know what the future is going to hold for you or your project, because things change all the time. When you do something in web, the chances that it's going to change is almost 100%. Okay, so you really want to develop your website in such a way where it allows for optionality. So I'm going to open up this index.html here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all this. I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut. So if you're using Visual Code, this will work. If you're not using Visual Code, I'm not sure. So go ahead and try, but it's Alt, Shift, and then down. If you're using Linux, it's Alt, Control, and down for that. I think that will work. I'd have to try. Okay, so we got road bike. We need to change this to gravel. Bikes. There we go. Okay, so we got bike type container. That is working out pretty well. We don't really have a good ID here, so let's go with gravel 1 container, gravel 2 container, subheader. Okay. Yeah, we'll leave this here. So gravel bikes, that's fine. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save, and then I'm going to come back over to my website here and then see if the changes are appropriate. And it looks like they are. Okay, so up to this point, we have our content. Next, we need to, I'm noticing this. Okay, so So we got some style differences going on here. Let's go ahead and start with the actual Flexbox portion, and then we can address the styles. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to open up index.css. Okay, we're going to get rid of this for now, and we'll come back to why I'm getting rid of that here in a second. So we got border radius of 5 pixels, margin bottom of 10%, padding left of 10%. Okay, so we're doing pretty good here. And then HTML, background color. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to do, well, one, I'm going to add a comment here. So Control KC, if you're using Visual Studio Code. It might not work with the other ones. And then I'm going to go Flexbox. Okay, there's a couple different ways that you can organize your code. You can do it by content, kind of like this, or you can do it by logic, like this. I think I'm going to do it by logic for now. I generally do it by content, but we'll do it by logic for right now. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is I need to set my container for Flexbox. The question becomes, well, where do I want to put my container? Well, I could put it here on body, and then I would have access to this child and then this child. Not really what we're looking for. Okay, I could put it on track road container. Okay, which then that would give me this child that I'd have to deal with, and then this one. Okay. So, and then we also have this one down here. Now, I think what we're going to have to do is something just a little bit different. So we're going to alter this structure a little bit. I'm going to add another div here, and then I'm going to do a class. Let's go with bike type. We can go bike type here. We're going to have to change this class down here then, if we did that. So let's go ahead and push that up. Bike type. Let's go model container here. Because that will make a little bit more sense. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to show you guys a little trick. So that was Control F. You highlight the thing, Control F, and it auto-populates the thing that was highlighted. And then I'm going to replace every bike type container with model container. Like so. I'm going to replace all. And now I don't have to type so much. Okay, so there's that. Let's come back over here. Bike type container, and we're going to change this to model container. And now we're back to where we wanted to be. So we have check row container, and then we're going to throw each one of, do I want to do that? I'm going to leave that there because we might need that in the future, but I am going to add another div down here, class, bike type. Okay, here we go. Bike type. And then I am going to put my flex container on bike type. Do I want to do that? don't think so. So how do I have it over here? Okay. Okay, that's the difference. There it is. Okay. So now I can, instead of bike type, I can add flex container now. And we will make that here in a second. Okay, flex container. Awesome. Let's go back to the CSS. We have a class of flex container. And then we're going to go display flex content or so one of the things about web is it's very difficult to memorize everything. You should, if you're going to be using this often, which I don't use Flexbox that often, at least in the raw form, go ahead and Google it, right? So W3C Flexbox. Okay, and I am looking for, that was not helpful. Okay, there should be a CSS tricks. There it is. Okay, flex container, display, flex. Okay, flex direction. Okay, which is row. Okay, so I need both of these. Flex direction, which is row, and then flex wrap. Flex direction. Okay, and then flex wrap, which also is wrap. So we got that. Doing pretty good here. Let's see what we have on our website. Okay, essentially no change. Let's go ahead and inspect. Let's go up to flex container. Let's see if this is applying. Okay, that is fine. Any changes here? Interesting, interesting. Okay. Really want this to be a little bit wider. Okay. Flex container. So one of the things I haven't really covered yet when we're talking about troubleshooting, let's make this a little bigger. Okay, so if we have both of these and I uncheck one of these things, it will remove or add the property. In this case, flex wrap of wrap is taking away the functionality that we were looking for. So that's interesting. We'll get rid of that. Okay, so let's come back over here, flex wrap. There we go. Okay. Now, one of the things I'm noticing is when I make this bigger or smaller, that this is not adjusting the way that the other one did. So we can fix that. And we are going to start with bike image. The reason why we're going to start with bike image is because images by default overflow their container. And what this means is that if a image or content or really anything is bigger than the width of the content that it has been given, it will go outside of that container. We do not want that property. So we're going to go width 100%. We're going to save. We're going to go back to our website And we're going to test to see if that is doing what we want. And it certainly seems like it. Okay. Okay, so we got that. Let's go back here. That is working so far. Now let's address some of the styling issues. Okay, so we got a bunch of space here. We have a bunch of space here. Now, clearly this isn't something that we have done up to this point. If I right click on this and go to inspect, it's going to bring that object up in the inspector tool here. And then I can hover over it and see, okay, I have a blue here and then yellow bars. I'm relatively certain yellow bars is margin, and it is right here. Okay, so we have margin on our H tags. Okay. All right, and I also have a class of header 2, header 1, so I probably have all 3 as well. So let's go ahead and start adding those and fixing that problem. So if I go, well, first I need a comment to show header styles to show what is going on here, although it should be self-explanatory. Okay, header 1. I'm going to copy that a couple times, change the number. All right, and then I'm going to come up here and do that. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is go margin, come on, margin 0. Okay, 0% is fine. And I'm going to do that on all of them. So this is where we start getting into the conversation of how efficient do we want to be and how do we want to handle that. I'm going to leave it like this for now, but there is an argument to be made that make just a header class and then put margin 0 or whatever headers our default styles are going to be, and do it like that. For the time being, I'm going to use margin 0 like this. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a font size. All right. And I'm going to go 6 VW here. So VW is a dynamic unit and it stands for view width. Okay. Header 2, I'm going to go with 5. Header 3, I will go with 4. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my website here, and we have a significant amount of change. Okay, so the next thing that I'm noticing is that, okay, these things are too close together. So I probably need a little bit of white space right in here. I definitely need some white space in here. And then Madone, the actual model for the bike, can probably stay nice and close like that. So let's go ahead and address that. Let's see how we want to do it though. So if I come back over here to index.html, we have our header 2. All right, and it's not inside of a container. So we're going to have to address that header directly. So it's going to be header 2, subheader, and header 3 are going to be left alone. So let's go back to header 2. And we will add back that margin, or back 1 margin, because we don't want the bottom anymore. Let's go with 3%, see what we get. Well, that's about right. I am okay with that. Maybe we could use just a touch more. Okay, road bike. God, that is not showing me what I want. There we go. So 3%, 5%. Okay, 5%. Let's go with 5%. There we go. All right, so refresh just to make sure it's the same, and it is. Just to check to make sure what we got over here. And it looks like we are about the same. Too much space in here. How much space is this? I have padding of 2% instead of margin. Okay. Well, we'll leave the margin for now. Okay, so that's going to do it for Flexbox for now. To be clear, there is more to be explored right here, but this gets the premise across. If you wanted to, actually, no, we'll do it. We will do it. It takes 5 seconds. So just to demonstrate, at media, screen, and since we went desktop first, we're going to have to go the opposite direction. So we're going to do max width instead of minimum width. Let's go 500 pixels. And then inside of that mobile view, so let's add a comment there. Inside of that mobile view, we are going to change how this is being handled. So we are officially at model container where we need to adjust this. So model container width of 100%. And CSS is telling me I have an error. Oh, apparently not. The visual code has changed the syntax highlighting. Okay, well, I guess it's been a while since I've done CSS. Okay, so we're going to do that. And then we're going to go under 500 pixels and see if it is doing what we want. And up to this point, it does not look like it. So here we go. I'm going to go to mobile view. And now it's doing not what we want. Okay. So the first thing that we need to do is, well, a little bit of troubleshooting. So I'm kind of glad I went down this path now. Let's see what's going on. Header, this one. Okay, we got padding left. I'm immediately noticing that the width of 100% is not working. So width, 100%. All right. So the container itself, oh, I got laptop. That's why. Let's go pixel 5. All right. Still not doing what we want. Okay. So what we can do here, instead of doing a width of 100% model container, let's do width of, oh, I don't know. Let's go 300 pixels because it needs to be wide enough where it actually wraps down. And then not so small where it doesn't ever break. Okay. So we are under 500 pixels. Why is this not working? All right. Let's go back to a little reference here. Don't care about justified content. Don't care about aligned items. I do kind of care about flex items. Okay, so this definitely should work. Now, if I come back over here and I go up to road bike, we got Madone container. Okay, I am looking for model container. So there it is, model container. All right, so my width of model container is working. but it's on the wrong thing. So this happens quite a bit where you place something on the wrong item. So model container is the wrong one. Let's go up to flex container. Okay, let's go back here. Flex container. Interesting. Nope. That should work. Because so I usually use a library for this. So if I went row for bootstrap, and then I went, well, I want a width of column 6 here, that'd be half and half. But if I wanted column 12 for the mobile view, this would be and you're just setting it to a width of 100%. So I don't see right offhand what is wrong. Okay, flex container, 100%, max width. And this is model container, save, come back over here. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to come back down to model container. Okay, let's open this back up. So another tool that I haven't shown you guys yet is this little layout tool over here. So, which is this. So we got final basis. So I'm going to highlight that. So this is clearly 2 items, okay? Base size of 100% width, which happens to be 350 pixels, which is correct. And then this is saying that it's 150. Because I don't have, so if I go up, that is just shrinking. So it looks like I am missing a Flexbox setting. Okay, flex container, flex wrap, and now this is doing what we want it to do. Now let's get above. Okay, so we're back to that original problem where, okay, that's 100%. This is not. Okay, now it's doing what we want. It's just not precise. Okay, so there's that. As soon as we get enough space on the screen, both of these jump up. Okay, and this is a very primitive mobile responsive view, like this. Okay, so okay, now that is going to do it for this little demonstration here. And I also really want to point out is that, look, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this for, you're going to run into little problems like that, especially if you get used to using frameworks and libraries and all these other things that help you develop and make you a little bit faster, but it gets you farther away from how it's actually done without those tools. So depending on who you're talking to, that could be a problem. I don't like it. It's good practice to do these things natively. But yeah, business pressures, it's called the formality gap. But so yeah, with that said, that's all I got for this one. We're going to be going into the it'll be CSS Grid next for the next demonstration here. So we're going to essentially recreate this. We're just going to do it in CSS Grid, which is going to be a little bit easier just because I've worked with it significantly more. So with that said, I'll see you in the next demonstration. All right, welcome back to the next demonstration. We're going to be going over CSS Grid this time, and what we're going to do is essentially the same thing that we did last time with Flexbox, except we're going to do it in CSS Grid, just to show you guys the difference between the two. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to get our content back to where it was before in the last section there. So first thing I'm going to do is highlight this and copy. If you don't remember the keyboard shortcut, it was Alt-Shift and then the down arrow. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to do is, oh, I forgot my header. Copy and paste. Okay, I'm going to alter this title here. Go back to gravel bikes. Okay. Again, we don't have any gravel bikes here, so gravel 1 container, gravel 2 container. Okay, we got bike type container. All right. Let's move this back to model container. So I'm going to use the same trick as last time. So I'm going to Control F on that, and it's going to bring those matches up. And then I'm going to go model container, like so. And I'm going to replace all of those. All right. So the images can stay the same. These headers can stay the same. Okay, so we're doing pretty good here. Let's save that and see what we got. And we have our changes here with gravel bike. All right, so we're doing pretty good now. I'm going to head over to index.css, and then I'm going to see what we got over here. We have our padding bottom. All right, that can stay. Bike image. The border radius can stay. Let's add that width of 100% before I forget. Here we go. So that's going to keep it within the container. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on and we're going to start grid. All right, so there's a few ways you can handle this. You can do something very similar to what like Bootstrap would do, which would give you 12 columns. I think I'm going to go into that direction as it is. Or you can essentially just split up your website in little logical chunks. That is a option as well. And then I've also seen people just essentially just grid everything, where they go, okay, this is the entire grid for the website, and maybe we'll do 24 columns because we want a little bit more flexibility there. And then you end up using a span to control where that content ends up going. Okay, so what I want to do here is I'm going to start with dot, and we're going to go grid container. Like so, display grid. All right. Let's go grid template columns. Let's go ahead and say we're going to do that 12. Oh, silly me. And we'll do 12, and then we'll do 1 FR for all of those. Okay, and we'll keep it like that for now, for desktop at least. Okay, so we got repeat of 12, 1 FR, and then we have a grid template rows, and then we're just going to go auto here. So anytime we need a little bit more space on this, grid template auto is going to give us a new row. Okay, so we have grid container here. I just saved this, and I am noticing that our images are very big now. That was from the 100% width. Okay, so we need to apply this grid container, and of course, like always, the question becomes, well, where do we want our grid container? So I think I'm going to put it right here. Grid container. Like so. Let's see what our changes are. And notice we have significant differences now. Okay. Significant in Indeed. Okay, so this is where it can get a little confusing in terms of how you want to handle this. Now, we have our check road container here. We have a grid container here. We also have headers, okay? There's a few ways we can handle this. We can use another class, and then that class is essentially going to say, okay, this is a class of 100% width, essentially. We could do that. We could go grid container and then go into the H2 and do it that way. And I think that way is going to be just a little bit more efficient. So I think that's how I'm going to do it. So let's go ahead and do it like that. Grid container. We're going to step into H2. And then we're going to say, I think it's column span. Column span. And then we're going to start at 1. And then we're going to span 12. I think it's this. All right. So as always, this is wrong. It's coming up as an error. As always, you're not going to memorize all these. CSS grid span. Grid column. That's what I was looking for. So grid column, let's make sure I got the syntax correct. And this is what I was looking for down here. Okay. So grid column, 1 span 12. Let's see what we get from that. So let's come back over here. And we have road bike, which seems to be doing exactly what we want. Let's pull up an inspection tool. All right. Grid span. Let's go ahead and highlight this. And it is indeed doing exactly what we want. So if I come over here, grid column, what this first number represents here is where it's going to start in the grid row. So if I do a 0 here, it's going to be unhappy about that. So everything starts at 1 for this. And if I wanted to add a little bit of spacing instead of using padding or margin, I can do so. I can just add a 4 here, and it's going to go 4 over for the starting point of this little road bike here. Now, the problem with that is now I have a span of 12. I'm saying start at 4 and then span 12. And because we have auto on row, this gives us a little weird thing that's going on. Oh, sorry. This gives us a little weird thing that's going on here because we're spanning more than what the row has. So we're going to be somewhere in here for that span 12. And being that we have 12 columns, this puts us at should be 8. Span of 8. Okay, let's go ahead and enter that, and then let's see what's going on. Oh, my fault. Span goes to 12. Okay, so if I do that, yeah, it goes right to the edge. So this extra space in here was from the margin. That is my mistake. So here we go. We got all of these now. Okay, so I'm going to change that back because that is for demonstration purposes only. Okay, so we have our H2s. Grid container, and now we're going to step into that div. We're going to give it a grid column as well, except for we're going to go, ooh, we got a problem here. So I'm going to show you that problem. I'm going to go 1 span 6. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to our little demonstration here, and then I'm going to show you guys what is actually happening. So if I come down here and we hit one of these divs, okay, I'm going to pull this back up. Notice that we have, okay, 1 and then span of 6. And then same thing down here of 1, 1, 1 span of 6. Okay, so what's happening here is that we're telling this element here to start at position of 1 and then span 6. So not whatever is left span 6. So this doesn't do exactly what we are looking for. This is essentially saying start on a new row. That is a problem. So what we're going to do, if we want to do it in this way, I forgot the syntax for it. So it's going to be CSS Grid column autofit max, I think it was. Let's read this real quick. Okay, autofilling CSS Grid. Here are the results. Blah, 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 blah. Repeat, autofill, min max. This is a little bit on the complex side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up another project that I've done in the past, which is this one. I'm going to open this up with code. I'm going to see how I solved this problem before, because I know I have. So CSS index, let's come down, main images, pricing, features. No. This. Grid template columns, repeat, autofill, min max, 300 pixels, or 1FR. Okay, so let's go ahead and minimize that. Let's go back to our CSS here. So CSS grid container. So instead of grid template columns like so, we're going to do this. Now, I still want that here. And then I definitely want this to go away. So this should work. Let's go see what we have over here, which is this. Okay. Okay. Interesting behavior. So if I lower this, as soon as I start getting smaller, it doesn't do what I was hoping. Okay. So we got min max 300 pixels. So what this is saying is the minimum value, so the first half of this is going to be 300 pixels. Okay. If we go above 300 pixels, we want 1FR. All right. And then this behavior right here is going to say, okay, well, autofill. We want this thing when we get to 1FR to take up the entire space of that column. Okay. So this over here is doing what we want. So if I inspect here, this is the entire width. If I come over here and I make this a little smaller to represent the problem that we have at the moment, this is coming up as a image. Let's go ahead and, okay, I'm going to have to make this just a touch smaller. Okay, so there's that. We have the Emonda container, grid container. So we want this one. Okay. We'll highlight that real quick. We'll see what styles are being applied to it. And it looks like nothing. Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to save this real quick, and then I'm going to do a hard refresh. I'm going to force this cache to update, and we're still on that container, and we're still getting nothing from it. Very interesting. Okay. All right. So if that is the case, how do we want to handle this? We have grid container, header 2. Okay. We need some sort of way of dynamically. Okay, we'll go back. We'll go back to this. So 1 span 6, and I'm going to pull out a different trick. Okay, and one of the things that I think is very important to talk about at this point is, again, you're not going to memorize anything, but, well, you should memorize a little bit. Don't worry about memorizing too much. Just understand that you have a bunch of tools available to you, and just remember that the tools exist, and then you can go look up what you need to get the effect that you're looking for. So right now I am looking for CSS nth child. So notice that this is a pseudo class, okay? And then this right here is saying, okay, on div, go ahead and do a little different thing. So first thing I'm going to do is I got grid container div. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to repeat this. All right, I'm going to come over here to nth. I'm going to go nth child, and then I'm going to go even. And instead of starting our span at 6, we're going to start at 7. And then the span is going to go to 12. Okay. So come back over here, refresh. Let's see what we got. Okay. We have. Oh, all right. So let's go ahead and inspect this. Let's see what we have. This is saying span of 6 still, where we're starting at 1. And then if I go up here, which is this one, this is span of 7. Very interesting. Okay, so I'm going to change this back to odd, because that is not doing what I wanted to do. And now it is. Okay. So there is that. So this gives us a very similar effect to what we were doing before. Now, right now we're taking up the entire width of what we are trying to do. So the first thing that I want is I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do this. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of padding, both of which are going to be on the left. I'm going to come back over here. We have a left here. Okay, that didn't do what I wanted right offhand. I'm going to save that. Okay, so this image is significantly bigger than this one. Why is that? It is because I lost 2 on the span. So this would be 4. So let's go 5 there. Let's go back to 8 on this one. Do we get the same size? Close. Okay, let's go back to 7 here. Kind of looks like we're in between, which is not great. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this 2 span 4. And then let's go 6. Actually, let's go. So if we keep these even, 6. Okay. Nope. All right. So we're immediately in the other type of methodology of handling this problem where instead of having this, we would need to move this up. No, we would need the road container. Div. Wait, no. We do need that. Move that header up. Road container goes down. Same thing with all of this. And I am missing a closing div here now. So that other div is going to show itself eventually here. There's that. Okay. Okay, div ID gravel container. All right, so there's that. I'm going to move this up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that old project there, and then I am going to readdress that autofill. All right, so that was over here. This one, grid template, columns. Okay, back to this, back to this. Okay, autofill max, 300 pixels, 1FR. Okay, I can get rid of both of these. Actually, all of these. Save. Refresh. Okay, back over here. All right. We got a model container check. Okay, so this isn't updating. Let's go back over to the HTML, save that. Check row container, row. Okay, so this is better. This is at least the format that we were looking for. Okay, so there's that, there's that, there's that. Yay. Okay. Let's make sure gravel does what we were hoping it does. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix that grid container. We'll need all of this. Okay, class grid container. Let's come back over here. Let's see if that is working as intended. And it is. Excellent. All right. Next thing that we need to do is get some padding in there. So instead of using the little column thing, what I will do is, okay, grid gap, grid column gap, column grid gap, column gap of 2%. Let's see what we get. And now we have our spacing. Okay. So we're doing a little bit better there. All right. Okay, responsive, pixel. So one of the things I'm noticing is that once we get to that minimum point, we're just going under. Okay, so that's just one more thing that we need to fix. Let's go ahead and change this to 150 then. There is not a device that I know of that is less than that. I don't think that's going to do what we want. Okay. As expected. Okay, so what is happening here is that we have a autofill. We have a minimum of 150 pixels. No, that can't be right. Repeat, autofill. Okay, the other option here is auto fit, I believe. CSS Grid, auto fit. Autofill, auto fit. Can I make this smaller? Okay. So autofill. Okay, yeah, I definitely want auto fit. All right. Okay, that is the behavior I was looking for. So auto fit instead of autofill, what this is going to do is say anything that is less than, or anything that is, this minimum value is 150 pixels. The maximum value is 1 FR. Okay, and then we also have a column gap of 2%. And that gives us this effect right here. So as we go down, down, once we get to 150 pixels for the image width, it goes and wraps for the CSS grid. Okay. So there is that. And let's go ahead and change this. Let's go back to 300 pixels, make sure that is working the way I expected it to. Okay. So now that we're at 300 pixels. Okay. So the only time that this is going to be on one row is if both images are 300 pixels. Too big for what we're trying to do. I think that 150 was about right. I'm going to go back to 150. And that 150 was about right. Okay. So this is working out pretty well. And we don't start overlapping until about 158. So there's no mobile device, unless it's a smartwatch, that's going to be less than 150 pixels. So that is working out. We have a gravel bikes, and I think we're going to leave it there. This video has gone on long enough as it is. So with that said, that is the difference between CSS Grid and Flexbox. Again, I try to leave in these mistakes for students understanding that a good chunk of it is guess and check. A good chunk of it is, I think it does this. And then, well, it didn't. And then you got to go troubleshoot and figure out why that is. I think it is a disservice for a lot of these videos online that go, well, this is perfectly how we did this. Okay. Especially in a academic setting. So with that said, I think we are all set here. So that's going to do it for CSS Grid and Flexbox. We are going to be moving on to front-end tools, which is just me babbling a bit. And then immediately after that, we're going to be going into JavaScript. So with that said, we are all set. I'll see you in the next lecture.